begin. So I've started recording. Now, let me go back to the instruction on Zuri. So where is it? Okay, this one here. So the instruction is create a budget class that can instantiate objects based on different budget categories. This is the first instruction here. I like taking I like solving programming problems by taking it a sentence at a time, or step-by-step approach. So let me paste it here. So let us do what is written up here. Let's create a budget class first of all. So we create a budget class by saying class budget. Finish. That's just how to create a budget class. Now, the next thing they say that the budget class should do is that the budget class can instantiate objects based on different categories. It should be able to instantiate objects. It means that down here, I should be able to do, it means that down here, I should be able to do something like, I should be able to use this budget class I just created now. I can do something like food budget is equal to budget in a parenthesis or round brackets. I should be able to do something like this with this budget class I just created now. Now it says this is what we call instantiating an object. This food budget is an object. This food budget is an object, while this budget is a class. So we instantiate objects from classes. But now our class here, this class we just created is not, we are not done with it yet. There are some things we need to put into a class, because a very good tutorial master that I know, he likened a class to a blueprint or a prototype. You know, before we actually build a house, we have a blueprint where we put the specification of the house. We put the color, the height, the dimensions of the house. Yeah. So now we have to put some things about this class, some typical things about how a budget class should look like. So first things first, a budget should have a name, isn't it? Now, what this food budget now is not the name of the budget though. This food budget is the name of the object we are creating from the budget class. But it's inside here that we specify the name of any object we create. And how do we do that? The first things first is that we say self, comma, then name. Then under it we say self, we call self again, dot name is equal to the name that is passed in. So now, which means that at the point where I am instantiating an object, at the point where I'm instantiating an object from this budget class, I'll have to pass in the name of that object. So let us pass in a name for this object. We'll call it food. So now I have created a class, and the class is going to accept a name, and I pass in that name, food, into an object called food budget. So now we have created a food budget object from the budget class. I hope this makes sense to everyone. Is it okay? Does anyone have any question? No question. Should I move on? Just one answer, just one reply is okay. Hello.
Yes, you can move on.
Okay, all right. Okay. So now the last time I solved this, I created another attribute of this budget class, and I call that attribute balance, because a budget should have a balance or a fixed amount that we keep for that budget. And I made that attribute 0. We can call these things attributes here. This balance is an attribute. This name is an attribute. Another name that they are likely called, they are called variables, but not just regular variables. They are called instance variables of a class. And why are they called instance variables of a class? They are called instance variables because their value, the value for these variables have a tendency to change based on the object we are creating from it. They have a tendency to change. But don't as we continue, you will you will learn what I mean by that. So the last time I did this thing, I made balance 0. But now I don't want to make balance 0. I want to do something like this. I want to accept the balance at the point where we are creating, instantiating the object. I want to accept the balance too. And I will now say that self.balance. I will now say that the balance of the budget is equal to the balance that is passed in. So this means now that when I want to create an object from the class, I have to pass in both food and also a balance. Let us say 2K. So now we have created a food budget. The name of the budget, we passed it as food, and we passed in the amount, the initial balance of the food budget to be 2,000 naira. Now at this point, let us print out something. So we print out food budget dot name. Let me put it in an F string. And say you have created a dash, you have created a dash budget with, let us put the amount, let me put it in dollars. Food budget dot balance. Now let me run this code so you see what I'm doing here now. So when I run this thing, it's supposed to print this line for me. You have created the name of the budget I created with the amount that I passed it in. So you will see that now. If I run it, this is it here. It says you have created a food budget with $2,000 balance. So remember when I was doing self.name and self.balance? That's why I'm now doing food budget.name and food budget.balance. This self means that I am calling this class. And since I created this object from the class, that means that well, if I can also, this self can replace, this food budget here can replace this self. So I can also call food budget.name and it will give me the name that is passed into it. And I can say food budget.balance and it will give me the balance that was passed into it. So this is what this first sentence means. Create a budget class that can instantiate objects based on different budget categories. Now let us make some adjustments to our code. Let us say, let me just call this our first budget. So our first budget is food. our second budget. I'll create a second budget from the budget class. Let's pass in a name of the budget, clothing. Then let's pass in the amount we want to budget for clothing. And let us say 5,000. Now let's create a third budget. And we'll create it from the budget class. Let's pass in the name entertainment. Let's pass in the name entertainment. And let's budget 3,000 for entertainment so that we can have maximum flexing. All right. So we've successfully done this first part that says create a budget class that can instantiate objects based on different budget categories like food, clothing, and entertainment. That's what we have done here. Let me take this to another line. Okay, now the next thing in the instruction we are given is that these objects we have created now, they should allow us to deposit funds into them. You should be able to deposit funds into them. They should have the ability of depositing funds into them. Now, this word deposit is a task or is an action that we want this first budget, second budget, and third budget to be able to what? To perform. We want first budget, second budget, and third budget to have the ability of depositing funds into themselves. So how do we do that? Because the three of them, the first, second, and third budgets, were created from one budget class. So we can pass in that ability into this budget class. And how do we do that? We create a method called deposit. Create a method called deposit. Now, the deposit method should have an argument self as a start. Now, what other parameters should deposit have? What other parameters should deposit have? This init method here has name and balance, because at the start, when we want to create an object, we should be able to pass in the name of the object and the balance of the object. Now, we want to deposit. What should we pass into the deposit method in order for us to perform a deposit? Who has an idea of what we should pass in?
Amount.
Thank you. Passing an amount. This amount we are passing in, we will now do something. We will now perform an action with this amount. And what action are we performing with it? We will say now that self.balance. The balance in our class. Let us add it. Let's add it to the amount that is passed in. The balance in our class, let's add it to the amount that is passed in. And after we do that, we should return the new balance. We should return self.balance back as the new balance, because now self.balance, the value for self.balance will change because we have added something to it. We have added amounts to it. So the value will change. So let's see that. Let's try just one of them. Let us say our first budget now. Bring it down here. Now that's a first budget dot. To access a method from it, we put the dots and then we call the method. The method is deposit. So first budget dot deposit what? Remember, this self just means that this object can access everything about this class. but it's not like a parameter that we need to pass in. The only thing we need to pass in is an amount. So let's pass in an amount. So in the first budget, we want to deposit money into it. We want to deposit 1,000 into it. So let us do something to show that, for us to clearly see that this our deposit method work. Let it return the old balance and the new balance. Now, how do we get the old? Because what we just did there now is the new balance. Now, how do we get the old balance? Let's say, let's call a new variable. This one will only exist inside this method. Let's say old balance is equals to self dot balance. It will be the old balance before we add amounts to it. So now let us return both old balance and new balance. So this one will be old balance. I say old, comma, new. Now let's do that and see. So we've instantiated 3 budgets from the budget class, and then we deposited 1,000 into the first budget, which is the food budget. So now let us run our code and see what we'll get. Oh, okay. Nothing is coming out. Why? Because we should print this thing out. No, the print function makes us be able to output something. So let's print it out. So let's run the code again. Now, what do we have now? We have the old balance as 2,000, and we have the new balance as 3,000. So I want to entertain a question here. Any question? Any questions so far?
I have a question.
All right.
In that deposit function, what if I write self dot balance equals to amount?
Self dot balance equals to amount. Okay, like in this part here, if I say self dot balance
Yes.
equals to amount, it is going to totally replace the value for the previous balance with amount. It is not going to add it. Now let us try that.
Okay.
To show. It will not do any addition, it will just replace it. So let's do that. I run the code. Now what do we have here? Remember that the initial balance we passed was 2,000. The amount we wanted to add is 1,000, and that was the amount that it gave us back. It did not add it.
Okay.
All right. So any other question? All right. So let's continue. Everyone should feel free to ask a question at any point in time. Okay, I want to ask, calling the name of these objects first budget, second budget, and third budget, or calling it food budget, clothing budget, and entertainment budget. Which one would you prefer? It's just based on preferences. So you'll be able to understand better. Which one is better?
For me, this one.
This one, like, is this food budget light?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I'll leave it as.
It's long, but it's more explanatory.
Exactly. You should be able to know what you are doing with it. True. True. Okay. Now let's move on to the next step that we are told that our objects should perform. The next action. The next thing is that it says our objects should be able to withdraw funds from themselves. Be able to withdraw funds from them. So which means that, like, for this food budget now, we have deposited 1,000 to the initial 2,000. We have 3,000. Now, what if we change our mind? Can we withdraw that 1,000 back? Let us make it possible for it to withdraw, for us to withdraw money from it from the budget back. So we create another method called withdraw. Now, as usual, it's going to have self as the first argument, and then it will have an amount we want to withdraw. So I can just go straight up forward and say, when we want to withdraw, the balance we have is equal to the balance we have minus the amount we want to withdraw. So it will subtract the balance we have from the amount we want to withdraw, and it will now give the balance we have a new value. But there will be an error if I should use this code like this. Why? Because there may be a situation whereby the amount we want to withdraw is greater than our current balance. So Python is going to give us a warning or an error that this is not possible. So in order for us to handle that situation, we have to use an if statement. We say, in case so, if self dot balance is less than amount, if this kind of thing should happen, let us return a statement that says you don't have enough cash. You don't have enough cash. Now let's create an else statement. Now this else statement is now in case everything is all right, in case we have enough cash, then we should now subtract it. And after we finish subtracting it, we let us return this statement again, give us old balance and new balance. Give us the old balance and the new balance. Okay, now this I've not created a variable called old balance yet, so let me create old balance. So if you notice, this old balance does not belong to the class. That's why if I want to use old balance, I have to create old balance. But any variable that belongs to the class must be created here in the init method. If you don't create a variable here in the init method and you want to use it in multiple methods, you have to start repeating yourself. You have to be creating it every single time. Okay. So now let's do something. We've deposited 1,000 into the food budget. Now let us say we want to withdraw 2,000 or 15 from the food budget. So we say food budget dot, then we call the method withdraw, and withdraw takes in just one argument, and that argument is the amount we want to withdraw, which is this amount here that we put here. So it means whatever you put here, it will be what the method will take in. So we put amount here, so the method will take in an amount. So let us withdraw 15 from it. Now this thing is not going to give us an output because we've not enclosed it in a print method. So let's print it out. Let's print it out. So now I don't want to print in the first one about deposits. This code here will run, but it will not output anything because it is not enclosed in a print statement. This is the only thing that will be printed now. But still, we are still depositing 1,000 into it. All right. So now let's run the code. So first things first, we created food budgets and other budgets. Now, facing just the food budgets for now, we deposited 1,000 into the full budget, making the amount in full budget 3,000. So now we withdrew 1,500 from full budget. We withdrew 1,500 from 3,000. That gives us what? Our old balance is 3,000. Our new balance is 1,500. Is it clear to everyone? Okay. I believe the silence means that you are getting it. It's actually easy. And one thing about object-oriented programming is that it saves us a lot of stress in the long run, which means you just have to define everything you want to do before you start. Once you define it, just be using it. So you don't have to repeat yourself over and over. I think the network logged me out for bad network. So let me go back. All right. So let's continue. Sorry about that network interference. So we are, can you hear me?
Question.
Okay, what's your question?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Continue.
Hello?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I can.
And that and you get you defined old balance.
Come
You
again.
in that withdraw function, you define old balance.
Yes, yes.
In the withdraw function,
Yeah, I'm with you.
you define old balance.
Yes.
You know, in this coding, position matters actually. What if I define this old balance before if statement? Will it have any effects?
No, not in this case.
Will there be any?
No,
Okay.
no, it's not.
So
in this
if I
case.
define this old balance, it will still work very well.
Exactly. But you should just be careful about your logic. You can still do it here before you even start. You can still do it here. It will run very well.
Okay.
But in some other cases, though, there might be some issues, but not in this case.
All right.
So if I should run it again, just to show. So there was no issue.
All right.
Okay, it's a good question. Now, the next thing, our budget should be able to compute our balances and give us back information. Now, how do we do that? How do we compute balance and give us back information? We use another method called, let us call it, this one is, you are just calling it balance, so you can give it any name. Let's say it is get balances, or just get balance. Now, get balance will take self as usual. Now, should our guess balance take any other parameter? I don't think so. We don't need an amount because we're not paying in, or neither are we withdrawing. We only just want to get information from what is already inside of it, which is just balance here. So you should just tell us what balance we have inside it. That means that we can just return self dot balance. Now let us try that and see. So let me take this out. I don't want it to print it out again. Now let us get the balance for each of them. Let's get the balance for each of them. Let's get for both for the full budget dot get balance. Now if you notice something, our get balance inside of this parenthesis here, it's going to be empty because we did not pass in any parameter here. So we will not pass in any arguments here. Parameters are what we pass in when we are defining the method, while arguments are what we pass in when we want to use the method. Don't worry, all these terminologies, you will come to be conversant with it. I also have a blog that I talk about terminologies like this so that one can be conversant with it. Even when I started writing codes, it was very hard to keep up with so many terminologies. But believe me, once you start, you're going to get the hang of it. So now, if you notice, none of the get balances for each of the objects so far, none of them has an argument. Why? Because they all inherit this method from the budget class. And this method does not have a parameter. So it will not, these ones will not have an argument. So let us print it out. Let's run our code. No, I should put it in the print method. So print each one of them. Print each and every one of them. Okay, now let's run our code. So what do we have now? We have the balance for food to be 1,500, the balance for clothing as 5,000, and the balance for entertainment as 3,000, which is clothing is still 5,000, budget is still 3,000. But remember, we have done some things with food. So food was initially 2,000, but food is now 1,500. We paid in 1,000 into food and we withdrew 1,500. So that's why food is 1,500. So now, but this, back to this return statement here, what we are returning is not comprehensive enough. So it's best we put it in a string-like manner so that the end user can understand what this thing is actually working. So we say that our app, the app we created for them, is actually working. So we can create a string variable called feedback, and we'll now say the feedback is your balance is, put it in an F string. Your balance is self.balance. Then instead of returning self.balance, we return the variable feedback. All right. Now, I just wanted to make the sentence short, but you can make it as long and as comprehensive as possible so that your end user will understand that the get balance method is working. Though they don't know that it's get balance method that is actually working. The only thing they just see is the front end, what they can see. They don't know the actual logic that you write. So just give them good information so that they will know that your app is working. So the same thing here, you can edit this thing, put it in a way that an end user, somebody that does not know anything about technology, understand what is actually going on. Okay, so now let's get balances again. So now it says your balance is 1,500, your balance is 5,000, your balance is 3,000. So you can change this to be your balance is self.balance in, you now put self.name budget. So that will give us your balance is 1,500 in food budget, your balance is 5,000 in clothing budget, your balance is 3,000 in entertainment budget, just like that. So I want to give you an opportunity so that you can try new things out and enjoy the way it works. Okay, so now we have done computing category balances. Now for the simplest part of them all is the fourth one. The fourth instruction says transfer balance amount between categories. Transfer balance amount between categories. So that should be under this one here. So let us call it a method transfer. The name of the method should be transfer. Okay. Now, what did they want us to do? You have to understand what you are to do before you even start writing the code. So what they want us to transfer balance between objects. Know these three things are objects. So they want us to share the money inside food budget. They want us to share it with clothing, or they want us to share the money in clothing with entertainment, or just share that among themselves. But it can only be from one budget to another budget at a particular time. So which means that as usual, the first thing our transfer will take is self. Then it will take in how many other things? How many other things should transfer take in? It should take in the what? The the budget we are transferring from and the budget we are transferring to. Now you can just give this any name, but a name that you yourself will